Today, I'm going to show you how I use OneNote in a language teaching class. So I've been teaching for about 6 years and I've used Microsoft OneNote for about 4. And I've chosen to use OneNote because I've worked as a substitute teacher for quite some time. And I used to work at several schools at the same time, which means that I needed something to keep all the student work in order at one place and without a lot of hassle and learning new systems and things. So I've also used OneNote because it makes my life as a teacher very easy. Especially if you're teaching the same content repeatedly, which as an English teacher I'm doing. Now it's very simple to set up and students can use their own Microsoft account when they're trying to log into OneNote. And if your school uses Microsoft 365, it is actually easier to get going. And the good thing about OneNote is that it's accessible everywhere. So you can use your phone, your iPad, your Samsung tablet, iMac, MacBook, a Windows laptop, whatever you're using, OneNote is there and it looks the same on all devices. And there's even been some research on teaching and the use of OneNote, and the results are rather positive. If you know me as a teacher, you know that I have a particular view on language learning. I want exposure and interaction. And OneNote is the bridge between having the exposure and having students interact with the content I'm trying to present to them. Because imagine having a video with questions and you need to print all the questions and all the students need to watch the video at the same time. Using OneNote was the absolute way to make sure that students can learn at their own pace. I also think OneNote is a very good first step into the world of the 21st century skills, because it's a very simple program to use, and with all its features, it's a good way to have students develop their 21st century skills, from looking things up on the internet, to collaboration, to giving feedback. All of these things are available in OneNote, and I think it is a very good bridge between the paper world and the paperless world. So, as I mentioned, I center my teaching around OneNote. And let's have a look at the things that I use in my OneNote Notebook. So here we have the opening page of my OneNote Notebook, and we always open Notebook to welcome to our class notebook. Here I give some information about the class notebook, and I give the students some links that might be useful, like my Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok and Wakelet. I sometimes provide some extra information like my working days, my working hours, my school's email address, all the information that a student might need to know. Then if we look at the left hand side, we get our several sections, and each section is different. So all students have access to the collaboration space, the content library, and their own personal section, which is in this case these sections here. Now I see all of them and the students can only see their own. The teacher only section is of course a section for you as a teacher where you can put all the information you want to keep. Let's start by looking at my student notebooks. So if you click on Evander's notebook and go to classes, you see that I have two different classes. I have a class in which students are analyzing a review, and I have a class on Edgar Allan Poe about the Gothic. And you can see that I've added lots of things. So for example, in this classes, I have a video on the period in general. I have a video on Edgar Allan Poe for homework, and I have some questions about a telltale heart. I gave the students very simple homework today, which was basically finish the questions on the telltale heart. If we look at the class on analyzing a review, you can see that this class is a bit larger. There is way more information and there are many more questions. You can see that I have some orientation questions so that we can activate pre-existing knowledge, which is very important in learning. And then I give them some words that they might not know. I might give them the definition and ask them to look for a Dutch translation online. And here are the questions that I wanted the students to do. And since all students have either a laptop or a tablet, they can work directly into OneNote. It saves automatically and I can see their work. Another key aspect of language learning is interaction. And all the interaction I want my students to have and do and hand in is in the language file. So if we have a look at Violet's language file, you can see that she made an advice column. And this was an assignment in which they had to do a bit of research, a bit of reading and writing. And I gave them about 1 hour to do this. They had to read an article and write an advice column in which they give advice. And as you can see, I gave some language elements I wanted them to focus on. And then I corrected it using my Samsung tablet. You can see that she did a very good job with the linking words and the conjunctions, but there were some language issues she had to work on, like subject-verb agreement, prepositions, some minor grammar issues, and something with sentence structure. Now, since I do everything in English, students might not know all the words, and there might be some words that they need to look up. So let's have a look at the built-in dictionary features of OneNote and see how students can use those to get to know all the words. So let's have another look at this Analyzing a Review class, in which I ask students to analyze a review. What we could do is look up the definition of the word resplendent. If we double click and then click on Smart Lookup, you see that a new pane is opened and we have a definition of resplendent. We get some information from Wikipedia, some pictures that might be related to it, and some web searches also relevant for this word. If we look at define, we only get the definition with some information on its origin. This is a very good feature to have students look up the definition of a word instead of the simple Dutch translation. Now let's do the same then with Edgar Allan Poe. If we go back to the first notebook we were in and go to the literature class, you can see that I have Edgar Allan Poe. So let's select Edgar Allan Poe, do a smart lookup and see what we find. We see that we get information on Edgar Allan Poe. We get some pictures, some Wikipedia entries, and the web searches related to Edgar Allan Poe. So this is a very good way to have students look up information online without going outside the app and being distracted by other things. One of the most important sections in OneNote in my classes is the content library, because I put a lot of information in the content library. So let's have a look at my content library. And the first thing you see is the language bank. The language bank is the most important place of OneNote. This is where I put all the information students need to actually provide and work with language. So we have some useful phrases for giving your opinion. We have some vocabulary list, in this case the Oxford 3000 and the Oxford 5000. We have the Oxford phrase list, some linking words, some information on sentence structure and formal writing, and there is a list of common mistakes in writing that I wanted my students to focus on. There's also some information on how to use OneNote, in this case how to record yourself. The study guides are there as well, and in this case there's a study guide on paragraph structure and some outlines, and students can read this and print it if they want, but I'm not going to print it because I want to save some paper, and I know that most of my students read it once and then throw it away or put it in their bag to never be seen again. And putting things on OneNote and using OneNote as our content library is a very good way to both save paper and to make sure that students can find all the information when they need the information. There is also something on grammar, and there is some information for other digital tools that I want my students to use. The final section is the collaboration space, and this is where I have my students work together and I have my students give feedback to each other. Now, I don't use this section that often because there might be some synchronization issues, especially if you have a lot of students working on the same page. And I think the upcoming Teams collaboration features are way better than the features OneNote offers at this point. But it might be different in the future. It is a good place where students can give each other feedback. So if we have a look at how my students gave each other feedback, some students only filled in the after writing checklist, whereas others also put some extra information, in this case not enough words, and some other students even highlighted things that might be good or might need improving. OneNote is easy to use for me as a teacher, and I really like using it a lot, but there are some caveats we need to look at, and I really want to point them out as well. The first one is that you need a class that has access to either a laptop or a tablet, because if students need to work on their phone, it's not very useful. A good laptop or a good tablet for each student is very useful, and I think that you get all out of OneNote that you really want when they are behind a laptop or a tablet. I've noticed that students who work on their phone are always fighting with OneNote and never really learning in a very fun way. So although it's very useful to use on a phone to make some notes and other quick things, I think for actual learning in class you really need a tablet or a laptop. No matter what, I think Microsoft deserves full credit because they've done an excellent job in creating a OneNote app that works across all platforms from Android to Windows to Mac to iPads, and I think that's a very good thing. The second downfall is that there is some learning curve for students. Now, I usually force OneNote on my students because I have to maintain all these different schools and classes, but I think that the lazy student who's not really into it will most likely end up fighting and hating OneNote instead of actually learning from it. So I really recommend all teachers who are using OneNote for the first time, especially in a class with students who don't really know how it works, to spend some time on learning all the features and setting up OneNote properly. The third downfall is that depending on how you teach, there might be some extra work for you as a teacher because you need to put everything in the right spot and sometimes you need to recreate your worksheets. Especially if you use scanned files and scanned documents, you need to change them in such a way that students can actually type into them. I also miss better collaboration features. I know that the collaboration space is the place where students can collaborate, but I don't really like the way it works. There are many synchronization issues, and I've noticed that if you have many students working on the same sheet, it tends to lock up and don't work anymore. I know Microsoft is working on new collaboration features for Teams, so I'm definitely hoping that those will be better than the OneNote ones. However, I would really like some sort of feedback mechanism or a way to give feedback directly instead of having to copy everything to the collaboration space and have students give feedback there. The most important downfall of OneNote is its distribution feature. Now don't get me wrong, you absolutely need to use this feature to get the best out of OneNote. Otherwise you need to copy and paste everything to each student individually. The thing is, sometimes it doesn't work and sometimes it makes a mistake, skips students or just simply doesn't do anything. And in that case, if you need to teach a class, it is very annoying to find out at the beginning of your class that your page or section didn't distribute correctly. Now I would definitely recommend all teachers to send out their pages and sections the night before their class, otherwise there might be some problems at the beginning of your class. And that's how I use OneNote for my language teaching. Do my students like it? Some don't and some do. But I think that it's a very useful tool to have in a class, especially if you have several classes. I also think it's a useful tool for language learners in particular because you have direct access to all of this material, all of the information, all of the exposure that you want. You can correct their work using a tablet to give them direct and personal feedback, and I think that's a very good feature of OneNote. Let me know if you've used OneNote in your language class and what your experience is. Maybe you have some other tools or some other plugins you use with OneNote. For now, thank you for watching and I'll see you in my next language teaching video.